Thank the Force. We are live Thursday night, Star Wars Newsnet Live. It's 10 o'clock Eastern Time. My name is Tyler, joined by Miguel and Luke this evening. Guys, what a week it's been. So I started grad school this week, so we're pulling these long days, long hours now with, teaching and then, going to my own classes. And then we have all this Star Wars drama circulating. If you live in America, we got the DNC this week. So there's there's political drama, in an election season. But I have to say, and I talked to Miguel, so I don't know about you, Luke, and we've talked a little bit, but I feel like I'm ready to let off some steam tonight. Like I'm gonna just unload a lot of maybe not negativity, but just some grievances, but try to be as positive and respectful in the Star Wars world as I can, because we're talking about the Acolyte not being renewed, and I wish this could be a simple conversation, but it's not. We have, some other news that we'll get into as well, but I just want to get a quick vibe check, what are the vibes from everyone right now? Like Luke, what are the vibes coming into tonight, because we didn't have literally any time to chat before, because apparently, doing laundry is more important than hopping on to discuss a game plan before we hit that live button. So I just want to get a vibe check from you real quick.
I cannot believe you're airing out my dirty laundry like that.
What a pun.
It's a good
that was bad.
My vibe is that Star Wars has brought me so much happiness for most of my life. And this past week has been Star Wars making me kind of sad. Just the news that has come out. So I'm ready to, I'm really glad we had this podcast tonight, because I haven't really talked about it with anyone else. So I'd like to, just air some grievances myself. I'm sure I'm going to agree with you guys. I'm pretty like-minded with you guys. So it's going to be a good time tonight where we kind of just have some group therapy.
This is like a therapy session. Like, let it all out. This is a safe space. Maybe we'll see. I'm just kidding. Miguel, what was the vibe check?
I'm coming from the angry spot. Like I've been trying not to stick my head through a wall all week by reading the comments on the internet, and probably not the ones that you're thinking of. There have been some really stupid things out there. But other than that, I was thinking back on, I think it was Monday that we were chatting, and we were like, so what are we going to talk about on Thursday? Is there any topic? And, less than, 6 hours later, we was like, yeah, problem solved. We have a topic,
we got it.
Yeah.
I think I even... I was texting about to did you guys? I'm sitting there message that morning before I went to school and I was like, hey, just trying to think of some topic ideas, or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, we'll talk about it later. I'll come back to it. And then the school day's over. I finish up, some homework, and then I graded a few things. I look at my phone again, and sure enough, I said, well, all right, there you go. That's taken care of. We got plenty to disseminate this evening. But let's go ahead before we get into the Acolyte, which I am sure will take up the bulk of our time this evening. There's a few. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quick hitters here on the news. One of them is one that we can talk about for a little while with the Tamora Morrison stuff, and then I guess that and the Pedro news that we publish on Star Wars Newsnet. So those two things we'll talk about. The others are just some really quick things. The first is that the Monday pod that we usually do for Star Wars Newsnet will be shifted to Tuesday this week. I'll be taking a break from the Monday pod this week because the embargo date is Monday night for Star Wars Outlaws, and our very own Jay, who I would assume right now is busy playing Star Wars Outlaws, is going to drop a video review of Star Wars Outlaws. I hope he's having a blast. I won't reveal anything. We were talking about the game a little bit, and he's excited to share some information with the world. So it should be out Tuesday morning, I believe, is when he's hoping to have that video out to the world. So no Monday pod this week. Instead, we'll have the Tuesday game review of Star Wars Outlaws. Luke, I know you're I would say that you're a mild gamer, I guess, in terms of
Good way to put it.
So are you going to purchase Outlaws and play it right away, or is this you're gonna have to wait a little while?
I was on my Xbox yesterday looking at the Microsoft store, and I was looking at the price for it, and I was like, it's like $69.99, I think, for the base version. The most expensive version you can get is like $129.99. So
what a bargain.
Well said. I'm not going to be buying this right out the gate, but maybe 6 months down the road, maybe if we can get some price reductions, it's going to fall into my range to buy. So I think it looks.
Yeah.
I've heard good things about it. I think it'll be worth my time. I just want to make sure it's worth my money at some point.
Of course, and we're on our limited budgets here at Star Wars Newsnet for gaming purchases. And Miguel, you're not really a gamer, right? Like outside of like a Star Wars gamer, because I know you have certain games.
I am trying to finish Fallen Order, and I am failing at it so hard. Like I am towards the end. I'm just embarrassed about it. But yeah, so full disclosure here. So the review embargo is actually Monday morning. I'm not quite sure why Jay is pushing into Tuesday. I'm guessing that he wants to have the written review go up on Monday morning and then have time to finish up the video review for the channel. That's my guess. Full disclosure here, I'm also supposed to have early review, a preview of the game, but technical difficulties got in the way, so I am hoping that in the next few days we can solve it and I can actually play it before next week. But we'll see.
That'd be awesome.
It hasn't been like fully worked out. But yeah, like he will be doing the heavy lifting, and I will also be helping out at some point if we can get the review code in order early. And yeah, I think that was it that I had to say.
Fair enough. I will not be playing anytime soon. Maybe at some point I want to get a PS5 so I can play. Like I can't play anything. I have PS4. Like I can't play anything anymore. But like right now, just in terms of time, like I would rather spend my time reading Star Wars books and doing our timeline show pods and things. So I'm kind of like more invested in that. Like I played Fallen Order about 6 months after it came out. I haven't even played Survivor yet. I feel embarrassed saying that. But
so are you planning on buying Survivor on PS4 when it launches next month?
I don't think so, because I don't like I know at some point I want to get a PS5, and so I just want to go ahead and wait, and I'll just binge all those games at some point. I'm thinking right now that in like 2 years when I finish grad school, my gift to myself will be the PS5 and all the games that I've missed for the last like 3 years. I think I'm just gonna
maybe
and then
the
I'll
PS6
just
by that point.
Like, that summer I'm just gonna have like a mega video game sesh. But people on YouTube, go ahead and drop the link on your socials so people can join us in here. For those of you on Twitter, you can hop on over to YouTube, or feel free to just keep chatting with us, on there. That works too. But we want to get people in here tonight. Luke, this applies to you, not necessarily Miguel so much, because I know Miguel hasn't been following a ton of High Republic publishing initiatives necessarily, but we found out that coming up soon will be the wedding spectacular of Lula and Zine, and I am not necessarily up to date on my High Republic adventures, but
you're not.
I'm not. So I saw that, and I said, okay, things are going well, at least. things are happening.
Do you know the last issue you left off on?
Because what?
Do you know the last issue you left off on?
The second. I'm way behind. I was just waiting on the whole run to finish at this point, and then
that's fair.
I love the way. So I'll be honest, the High Republic adventures, I love the spreads way more than the Marvel run. Even though I'm a little more attached to some of the characters from the Marvel run, I just love the look of the spreads. So I buy the physical books of the adventures. So like
Oh, wow, okay.
I got like the whole phase 1 High Republic adventures, and then I'm
Oh, that's right. You
gonna
showed me
order
that.
phase 2 soon, and then I'm gonna get phase 3 just because I love the way they look way more. So I'll probably at this point just
They
wait
look
until I
beautiful.
can buy all of them at once and then just like read the whole thing like a graphic novel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Daniel Jose Older is just an architect. He's so good with his young characters, especially Lula
Mm-hmm.
Talisola and Zine Imrala. Those two, especially, he's done a really good job with their relationship and how they've blossomed into something romantic and verging on marriage. So, yes, their story. I think the High Republic adventures have gone pretty well. I've liked every issue that I've read of that. Probably a little bit more than the main line. The main line hasn't been bad. It's just I've liked adventures even more. So I'm excited for this. I think it's a one shot for the wedding
Yeah,
comic, and so yeah, I'm definitely going to
it
be
is.
potentially even purchasing the physical copy of it. It looks cool. I'm
Miguel,
interested.
we gotta get you in on the High Republic at some point. You know, we gotta wrap you up in this.
I do have Light of the Jedi sitting on my shelf. Like, it's been there for a couple of years. Maybe for celebration, I will try to read
I
it.
wonder
don't
if I will have read The Last Jedi like 4 times by the time you read it
Light of the
once.
Jedi.
That will
Yeah.
be like Light of the Jedi. Sorry, that will be an interesting. That will be an interesting case study. Like we'll have to monitor that. I've read it 3 times. So like we'll see
Are
if
you
I.
going
If
to
I
read Trial of the Jedi before he reads Light of the Jedi?
that's actually really good. June
Yeah.
2025. So last thing, and then we'll get to it. So couple
Wait,
Mando.
I counted like 2 things so far.
What?
Weren't there 5 things?
I'm gonna skip one. You know.
Okay.
It was like I
Miguel's
debated it.
calling you out.
I was like, I debate. I'm gonna skip it, but like we'll merge these two into
Okay.
like one. It's all Mando Grogu stuff. So
I'm just good at math, so
yes, of course, we have the scientist on board. So we have Pedro is supposedly like possibly gonna be on set later this year to film scenes for Mando and Grogu, which would imply the helmet is coming off in the movie because there's no reason for him to travel to be there unless he's taking the helmet off because he can voice his lines from wherever. So Miguel, you are the Pedro Pascal schedule expert at this point. I'm sure that I feel like like the meme of the guy with like all the stuff behind him and he's like freaking out. I feel like that's you, but with Pedro's schedule
The red
behind you.
strings attached to
So,
everything.
so my question for you is, how likely is it that he does get this few weeks to go like film? Can we take that with any sort of credibility?
to be honest, my initial gut reaction was that he already did this. Like, my initial thought was that he would have done this before shooting Fantastic Four. There was like, so first of all, they showed the trailer at D23. They said they've been shooting for a few weeks. Like, that essentially means that they started around mid-June, which is when we expected them to start. So if Fantastic Four started in late July, I guess that maybe they were supposed to be in London a few weeks before that to do some, prep, to do some costume, like camera testing and whatever. But with Disney being like the overseer of both franchises, I don't see why they wouldn't like try to get Pedro into the Mandalorian set for a few weeks and move shuffle some things around. In terms of the rest of the year, I'm pretty sure that Fantastic Four is going to be shooting for like until Thanksgiving at the minimum. So we'll see. I don't know. Like, there's possibilities of him being there for like a couple of weeks of additional photography and all that. Like, you never know. In terms of the helmet, though, I don't necessarily think that it's like 100% guaranteed that he's gonna be taking off the helmet. I think that there's a big component here that goes into marketing, and like they always have these big like videos with behind the scenes with people on the chairs and talking about the movie and the characters and whatever. Like, having your like, this is Pedro's movie, right? Like he is like the main name. Like he is the only name we have confirmed so far that is in the movie. So
Right.
if he is like the central star, having your central star being photographed on set is like pretty basic marketing. Like you don't want him to be separate from like the movie when you're trying to sell it. So I imagine that just
But that
for
should only take
marketing,
30 seconds. Like you could just have him in there, you do it, and then he's like, all right, see
right?
you later.
And
Or you could even fake that at the fan wherever they're filming Fantastic Four. You might even be
I mean,
able
yes,
to
of course,
do
but
that.
you can always get like some shots with him talking to Favreau, and like that, that's like a money shot right there, or even photo shoots like for a magazine that's going on in the back lot of the set that they have some green screen there and they just shoot him without the helmet or whatever. I mean, there are like endless possibilities, and this is like the biggest thing that Favreau has done for Star Wars so far. Like this is
Right.
like an actual feature film that's going to be in theaters. So this is no time to spare any expenses for
Right.
like this type of thing. And if you can get Pedro on set for 2 or 3 weeks, and you can actually shoot stuff of him being on set, like and actually acting there, like I don't know, why not? Like,
Mhm.
and,
Luke,
and
do you
that's not to
think?
take into account that maybe he even wants to be there. Like he wants the actual opportunity to be
Yeah.
on theatrical Star Wars. Yeah, go ahead.
I just like we've talked about this before. I really have a hard time seeing a world where he doesn't want to be seen in the movie, like in the 2 hours of whatever we get. Like, I just have a hard time imagining that his big theatrical debut in Star Wars, he's not going to at least want one moment where, his like helmet is off. And I just have a hard time seeing it. Luke, do you think like this? We have plenty of time to debate this, but I just want like real quick, how disappointed would you be if you don't see Pedro Pascal's face in this movie? Like on a scale of 1 to 10.
My disappointment, 1 being not very disappointed, 10 being extremely, I would put it at
10
like
being you're saying goodbye to Star Wars forever because you're done.
dude. Okay, well if that's 10, I'm gonna sit at 6 or 7, 7.5. Like this is a movie we're talking about. I understand season 3, we didn't get you there. You were busy doing other things. Apparently, it wasn't a priority or whatever. This is different. This is a movie. Like you are the name attached to the Mandalorian, even if it's Brendan Wayne or Crowder under there for most of the time. The people who know your name associate you with the Mandalorian. I think you need to be in the movie. I think your face needs to be in the movie. I would hope that you would want to be in the movie, Pedro. I want you there. I love you. I love you, dude. But I'd be pretty disappointed if
Luke's like, I just
I
love
didn't see
Pedro
it.
Pascal.
Honestly,
I just think
this
it's
is
more of a matter of he like elevates any
yes,
scene that
he's a
he's in
good
as an
actor.
actor.
Like
Like
he's
I did not
great.
like Wonder Woman like 1984. Like I don't like that movie at all. But like Pedro Pascal's scenes in that movie, like he eats it up. Like he can make a bad movie bearable at times,
He's
even
great.
just with his skill. And so, like, if Mando and Grogu, like, let's say they have a really solid movie with him having the helmet on the entire time. If there's even just a 2-minute scene, with him with it off, I think that just elevates it like a whole, notch for
I think
me
it does
on the
too.
list because
Yeah.
I think that that's something that no matter what else happens in the movie, that's going to be a scene that I'll remember. Like that's going to be that's like the moment. That's the money shot right there. And not that the movie won't have one without that. Like I think it certainly could and can, but that's like almost the guaranteed money shot that I would love to see walking out because that's been the biggest moments of both seasons. The first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian have been when the helmet, comes off for many people as well.
Yeah, especially
Go ahead.
end of season 1. I so powerful where IG-11 removes the helmet to give him back to like that's something that I haven't seen that in years, and I still crisply have that memory. And season 2, the end of that one where he takes it off to say tearfully goodbye to Grogu, like those things powerfully stick with you because Oscar or I'm seeing Oscar in the chat. Sorry, Pedro Pascal is so good. So yeah, that's my comments on that. He's very good. He makes me want to get into Fantastic Four. I've never even consumed any of that material, but like he's gonna be in that. Okay, maybe I'm gonna pick up Fantastic Four stuff. Like he's
Oscar
he's
is
good.
right. He did kill it in Game of Thrones. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of crazy
absolutely.
how Oberyn Martell
Oberyn Martell
shows up for like a handful of episodes, and then this Pedro Pascal just absolutely explodes. Like after that is pretty
Today,
awesome.
I will not die.
Good to see you, Manslayer. It's been a while. I know you've been really busy with your schedule's been changing a lot. But Miguel, tap the final word on this, and then we'll talk about Tamora Morrison before we get into the Acolyte.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna mention like what Travis said, that if you're Disney or Lucasfilm, why wouldn't you have like the final shot of the movie, like the thing that actually people remember being Pedro's face next to Grogu? Like that is like basically the internet coming to life. So why wouldn't you have that? And obviously that there's a story to be told first, and maybe that doesn't fit into it, but I think you can kind of like force it to, like, I don't know.
You should.
Yeah,
I mean, you really should.
and I don't know, I think I had one more point, but it probably doesn't matter, so go ahead.
So, Tamora Morrison recently said that he has not received a call yet for the Mandalorian and Grogu. Of course, we know that actors can, lie through their teeth and will lie through their teeth about this. Like Katie Sackhoff said something about how she's, not in the movie right now. She hasn't heard anything, and I think that's total BS. Like, I'm not calling her a liar, but come on, like there's no way she hasn't been talked to about being Bo-Katan like in this movie at this point. Like that's a guaranteed like lock of a character to be in this. The Tamora Morrison stuff, I think there is maybe a little more credence to, just because we know that they, maybe they weren't planning on possible more Book of Boba Fett in the future. They did leave it open to more stories with him, and they decided not to move that direction. And then season 3, we did not see Boba show up in season 3, and a lot of people thought that Boba would have a moment in season 3. And so now, apparently, I think he said like there was plans for him to possibly be in season 4, but now they're, reshuffling everything for this movie, and he hasn't received the call. So I think there is some credence to the fact that maybe he has not received a call and he might not be in this movie. So first of all is kind of what do we think about him not being in the movie? Because I think Boba is like a slam dunk character to have in a trailer. Maybe not even Boba himself, but just having, his ship fly through and like having that just a brief little, 1 second of the ship going through, so everyone going through. Do you think that, not that he needs to be in this, but do you think it's a missed opportunity if he's not, or do you think it's pretty inconsequential at this point whether he is or isn't? Miguel?
I don't know. It's very hard to answer that question without knowing the story. Like, if the story doesn't call for Boba, like, there's no reason for him to be there. Like, and that's basically what this comes to. Like, you don't rewrite the story to include Boba in. You include Boba in because the story calls for it. So if it doesn't, I'm just glad that, first of all, that Sev is there. Like, I think that's like pretty huge, and the fact that they've revealed it in the trailer, like, even beyond the point that he is there, I was not expecting the first teaser trailer to reveal that, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's very hard to answer that question without knowing the story, and I am guessing that this is a more lower stakes story than perhaps one that would involve, Boba and calling, the army and whatever. So, I mean, I don't know, but I also get like Temora's point where he's like, "Yo, you stole my season of TV. Like, what's up with this? Like, I want to steal your movie too."
I love Tamora Morrison so much. Like, I want him to be in this movie just because I want him to have his movie moment again, in this. So I'm cheering for it. Like, I really am championing for it. But I won't be surprised if we don't see him. Luke, before you give me your Boba Fett thoughts, I need to ask you a Gareth Aurelius question as one of the biggest like Rebels fans I know. What's his like staff called again? Like the bow? Like what's it called again? Because only the honor god of the Lasan Prime or whatever can wield the whatever. Like, what's that called? And will we see that in action in this movie? Prediction time.
The name of that escapes me. It's, and I'm
Wow,
usually the
I'm
lore
shocked
master.
right
I try to some kind of electro staff. I don't think we're going to see that as much as I would really want to, because that's a really cool weapon, really unique weapon that Zeb gets to carry as a Lasat. I don't think they're going to pull that one out for the movie. As much as I would want to, it'd be cool. Maybe he could use it to lead the way, like they did to Lasan. It'd be cool, like a Wayfinder. It'd be way cooler to use it as a weapon to like shoot it or melee. I don't see Zeb being that involved in the movie. I think he's gonna pop in, pop out.
No,
so I don't think he's gonna have a need to even have any weapon at all. Unfortunately,
I'm hoping that he uses it in the blaster format, like the plasma discharge that it can do. Like maybe he's taking Mando in, has to drop him off and make a quick escape, and like has to shoot off, something.
I'd love it
as he's leaving. But what's that called? Someone in the chat. I need to know what that's called. I'm gonna lose my mind if I don't.
In the meantime, I could see Seb like being like the character that sets you off on your path, like, and that's basically, I think, the line he has in the trailer. Like, he's telling Mando, like, go over here, here's the mission, and then he, along with other New Republic officers, is called as reinforcements in the third act. Like, I could see that, like a not even like a supporting role, but a supporting role to a supporting role. Like, he is like has 3 scenes in the movie, but actually they have significance.
Yeah, that's true. I do think there is some credit to like Travis's line about getting fan favorites like this. Seems like a no-brainer. Like, that is something that people who may not be following the streaming as much, that are just really casual, like Star Wars fans.
Go, Nate Manning.
Oh, the bow rifle. Thank you, Nate. Yes.
Yeah.
The bow rifle. Oh my gosh.
AB-75 bow rifle.
Oh my goodness. But like, it does seem like something easy they could put in a trailer or market a little bit, that Boba Fett is going to be, back in a Star Wars movie, like something like really easy to get, not that like that's going to bring the masses, but just a little bit something like that. I don't think hurts. Luke, were you going to say the name of the bow rifle?
It's just an AB-75 bow rifle is what he has.
Oh, okay. Yes. The
bow rifle is correct.
Bow rifle.
And yeah, just quickly, my 2 cents is like, if Boba Fett can at all work for the movie, I think you should throw him in, because this movie could use some help marketing. I haven't seen people be like, oh, this is a great title for it. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen people be like, oh, I was really wanting this. Like, I think this movie could use some help. So I think Boba Fett would be.
Miguel and I have gone back and forth a little bit on the movie title. I remember when they first announced that, and Miguel, you didn't really have a problem with it. You were like, it tells you exactly what the movie is supposed to be and what it is. And I remember just like groaning to myself, because I think Deadpool and Wolverine title had just come out or something too, and I was so annoyed that these movies that I was looking forward to, they all have the names of just the characters in the movie as the title. It felt like just back to back. Anyway, that's what it is.
In terms of the story though, like, and one final point, like, there's if this is in fact Mando season 4 turned into a movie, like stripped down to a 12-hour movie, like, there is some basis there for Boba to be there. So, because he was going to be in the season, like, there were rumors about it last year, and now he confirmed it that he was indeed going to be in season 4. So there is at least a version of the story, if this is in fact season 4, where Boba was in the story. So there is like room for him to be there potentially.
Okay.
And also, just quickly, I love Tamir Morrison too. Like, it kind of hurts to watch this guy be like, well, he kind of stole 3 episodes of my show, and then I thought I was going to be in season 3, didn't get the call. Thought I was going to be in this movie, didn't get the call. I like the guy. It sucks to see this guy who loves being in Star Wars and is a really solid actor not really get anything. And I don't want to divert this too far, but it's weird that like his show doesn't get canceled. It just kind of gets like, well, we might get back to you, but a show like The Acolyte is like canceled.
Okay,
We're
that's a
cutting
perfect
it off.
segue because
Yeah.
let's go ahead. Let's talk about it. Like it's time.
And
Okay,
interesting how those two go.
The Acolyte has not been renewed at Lucasfilm and will not be getting a second season here at Disney Plus. So there is so much to unpack here, and I want to start off with I think what's the elephant in the room with all of this, like the main thing to talk about. And to me, this is the most sad part about the Acolyte in general is that it feels like this show from the very first trailer that got released was never ever going to be received in good faith with so many fans. From the very first trailer with the red lightsaber and people trying to start this is contradicting canons, whatever, before it started. And then we get more trailers come out and people reacting negatively to a diverse cast. And then there was this whole, online campaign of hate that was generated at Amala Stenberg for being non-binary and one of the first like they them leads in, in something for Disney Plus in general. And then we saw a lot of racism directed at Lee Jong Jae for literally learning English to be in this role. And then, of course, as the episodes finally started coming out, then we get the whole like Miguel shared this earlier, like even Elon Musk, of course, tweeting "Go woke," "Go broke," and just nonsensical lines like that. And it's just nasty to see what the there was no good faith, I feel like, with this show, and the conversation around the show was not didn't even feel like we got to discuss the merits of the episodes as much, like from a a macro look at everything. Because I think on here we tried to do a good job of discussing the show, but it always had to come with the caveat of talking about the nonsense circulating it. But on the flip side, because of all of that, I think there was an overemphasis on people to be so extremely positive about it and try to push, like almost force like this narrative that this show is without great problems and is perfectly fine and really great. And I don't think we ever got to have a real discussion on this. I don't think the Acolyte in retrospect ever stood a chance. Like it ever stood a chance. And that's because there are way too many people that have a voice in this fandom that have absolutely zero incentive to say anything positive about Star Wars, that have zero incentive to try to respect anything Star Wars that comes out, because they make all of their money from, grifting online, being haters, and simply trying to stir the pot. And until we can figure out a way as a fandom to push those people to like the back mirror and just get rid of them, so to speak. And in the same respect, we have to find a way to limit the amount of toxic positivity that can persist in the fandom. Until that becomes more like reasonable to accomplish, any project that tries to buck the trend of Star Wars is I think just doomed to fail. So I want to start there with the Acolyte before we get into all the other stuff. Where do you think this show really ever stood a chance from the beginning? That's what I want to know. Just based off of the conversation that started from the show's, onset, from people who even had early screeners and were trashing things before it even came out. And Miguel, I know you said you were mad and you want to talk, but like let's start there and then we'll get into the show itself and what this means for Star Wars in the future as well.
Look, go ahead.
Yeah, did it ever stand a chance, even to start out with? It's easy to argue no. I mean, look at the initial trailer that dropped officially. It had hundreds of thousands of dislikes on YouTube. And so many comments that were just so mean, so racist, so stupid. It looked bad from the start, from a fandom perspective, and that hurt. Honestly, I wanted to like the show more than I did, because of all of the, like you said, just like nonsense that circulated around this like so heavily and so much, even before the show even released. I wanted to kind of put my blinders on so I could enjoy it without having 6 other random accounts tell me that I'm the worst human that's ever lived for liking it. So yeah, the cards were just stacked against this from the get-go. There's not a lot of white straight male positions in this show, so like I understand there's probably a large amount of people who, no matter if the show was going to be good or bad, we're going to review bomb it, we're going to attack people for liking it. Like, it just unfortunately brought a lot of hate, just with the nature of the actors that they got.
I've
Like,
never felt more
that's all it was.
exhausted watching a show from start to finish. Like I've
Yeah.
never felt more exhausted as a fan
That's
just
true.
because you couldn't like get away from it. Like no matter where you went, it was people, you know, having this just insane discourse over the most trivial things. Miguel?
So, okay, this is a very complex conversation. I do agree with most of your points, but I will disagree on the global take that this is what sank the show. I think what doomed the show was that it was not good enough, and because it was not good enough, it didn't carry enough views on Disney Plus to guarantee a renewal. And that's basically what this comes down to, that not enough people watched the show. Doesn't matter if they liked it or disliked it, doesn't matter if they profited from like talking very positively about it or very negatively about it. The fact is that not enough people watched it. This is the first time that the Star Wars series has not charted on Nielsen, and for 7 of the weeks that it was on the air on Disney Plus, 4 of them it didn't chart. It was in just 1 week. It was 4 of them, and on the final week it charted on number 10, which was like low, very very low, and the lowest viewership for any finale so far in Star Wars. Like, these are numbers that the Lucasfilm has, that Disney Plus has, and they're looking at them and they're saying they're not good enough to pour in another 150 or 170 million dollars into another season of this show, which is the most expensive one they've made per on an episode count. Like, Andor was more expensive, but it had more episodes. So this is actually the most expensive one they've made. So
I agree with you.
And there are actually no movie stars here. There are no movie star salaries to pay here. Like, this is mostly on purely production. So this is what it comes down to. And yes, I do agree that there was like a factor of being doomed from the start for what you said about the hatred that was going on before the show came out. Mostly because, and what we talked about in previous episodes, is that the overall narrative around Star Wars is very negative. And it's very negative because there are just these headlines that catch on, that just are tearing down the franchise to pieces. And whatever the reason may be, whether it's like Rise of Skywalker was like just bad, whether it was Last Jedi like retconned everything that George could have ever possibly conceived, or the Acolyte is just retconning Phantom Menace, or has a binary lead, like whatever it is, like these headlines are catching on, and people who are not tuned into this stuff are getting notifications on their phones, and they're saying, oh, a negative headline about a new Star Wars series. I'm not even gonna remember what this headline says, but the next time I hop into Disney Plus and I see a Star Wars series, I will have a negative reaction to it. So that's why I will not watch it. And the fact is that if the show was good, there would be some really positive word of mouth about it, and this would actually, like, the tide would turn. So you'd actually see more positive chatter about it, and maybe the next time this person hops onto Disney Plus and sees the Acolyte, he says, or she says, oh wow, let me see what all the fuss is about, like, and
Here's
that
a
didn't
couple
happen.
questions though.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything you just said, that
Yeah.
because I've talked before, like I didn't think it was a great show. I thought it had its moments, but it wasn't necessarily like a great show. And that when they announced this, I had mixed feelings because I wanted to see like the creative vision completed, but I at the same time didn't think that what we got necessarily warranted them spending that money to do more. I think what I'm arguing too is that I'm not sure if, let's say, if this was a really good show, I wonder how many people would have tuned in otherwise due to the amount of individuals that were trying to get people to not watch this and take it down. Just from anecdotally speaking, like people that I would talk to around, like that would tell me like, no, they heard that this show was so bad and they've watched other things, but they heard this one was bad. And there were tons of bad headlines, but like, on Rotten Tomatoes, had a critic review score was pretty solid. Like it was a pretty solid score throughout. And other like IMDb's like critical review stuff that I saw was pretty solid. So there were good headlines out there, like from a critical perspective. I know ours were not always like the nicest because we didn't think the show was anything more than average. But I just think that the negative headlines were so outlandish, and those are things that garner nowadays so much more traction. So like if someone goes and sees new Star Wars show destroys the lore of everything that's come before, which we see tons of those headlines from trailers, people naturally are gonna, those negative ones just automatically get more clicks nowadays. And someone sees that and they're not gonna read the article, they're not gonna sit there and read the article, they're gonna see that headline, like, oh, I probably gonna stay away from that show. And because I just wonder like how much of this show like it would have mattered if it was even that much better. Like I'm unsure, and we're never gonna know that because I'm not sure. Like who knows? Season 2 may have just made the exact same mistakes that season 1 made, and probably would have been about the same type of show, quality wise, that we got season 1. Like who knows? But we're never going to find out. We're never gonna know if they learn mistakes because of what happened. But it's just sad that we don't get to see that creative vision. But I 100% agree that the show doesn't necessarily, especially in today's world, deserve a second season based off of, the kind of just average meal that was put together in the 8 episodes.
Just one quick point, look. There's like on Twitter, like this argument comes up all the time, and on Twitter, the typical response that I've seen at least is that, oh, so there's actually another show with a non-binary lead and with a diverse cast and whatever that is actually going very well, and it's actually getting renewed for more seasons, and the numbers are there, and this, like, which is House of the Dragon, right? Like this is the typical comparison. But I'd actually raise you another Star Wars show, which is Ahsoka. Ahsoka has a Black Latino lead in Rosario Dawson, an Asian lead in Natasha. It had a third female lead in Hera. What's her name? I'm blanking on her name now, but had it had Iman Esfandi. Who?
Are you talking about Baylor Scholes Apprentice? Oh, Hera?
Yeah.
Was it Marianne Weinstein?
Marianne Weinstein,
yeah, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, yeah. It had Iman Esfandi, who is also non-white. It had a very diverse cast, and that show, which I think was better than The Acolyte, but it wasn't like very good. Like it was okay to good. That had better numbers. Like it and by the way, like the renewal of that show was also like not immediate. Like I think they renewed it because the numbers were good enough, and the story that they had planned for season 2 was important enough for the future, so that they actually they're actually going to spend another tons
Well,
of
they have
millions.
a whole feature film
Yeah,
that
exactly. So
is tied to this. So they have to try to make this work too.
yeah, and the renewal wasn't immediate. Like it took months for them to actually say yes, we're going to do it. So the Acolyte had like half the viewership or less,
Mm-hmm.
and like I get all the surrounding talk, but the truth is that I'm not quite sure that it mattered because the show was like I disagree that the fact that it wasn't good enough wasn't enough of a contributor. I think it was like the main contributor.
Mm-hmm. I don't hear a lot of positive things about Ahsoka as well, like in general, like online. Like I don't see a ton of incredibly positive things about Ahsoka. I think that like if the Acolyte had a feature film tied to that universe that they had already announced with their chief creative, officer as the director for that film, I think they'd be much more inclined to try to rectify the situation and do something, because it would feel weird if Dave Filoni's movie were to come out without anything necessarily resolved from Ahsoka and have to do all of that in a movie. I think they know they kind of need to push that, and so I do, but I do get, but the numbers for Ahsoka, I mean, they weren't. I mean, obviously, the Acolyte is way below anything that they've really done in terms of Star Wars, but the numbers for Ahsoka, like after as the show went on, weren't necessarily groundbreaking streaming numbers.
No, but they were consistent. As the Acolyte was losing people, like Ahsoka was like pretty consistent. Maybe it gained a few people along the way when they were like hearing, Kaden is gonna be in this episode, so whatever. Or maybe like I don't know, Thrawn. Like maybe people recognize Thrawn for whatever reason, and we're copying on like.
And those are characters that people are very familiar with. Like,
Yeah,
at this point,
I mean,
like,
and it's about
that goes back to
consistency.
the familiarity of Star Wars and people
Yeah.
even being unable to grasp something beyond that. Luke, go ahead and chime in for a second.
Yeah, I'm wondering if how big of a factor it would be that this took place outside of the Skywalker saga, because I think that's a huge difference between Ahsoka and the Acolyte. People kind of understand where Ahsoka fell in the Mandoverse, in the Star Wars timeline. And maybe it just, as a concept, lost people that like, this is 100 years before the Phantom Menace. You're not going to know any characters. I wonder if people that are like, I've watched all these Mando shows, but I don't know any of those characters. They're going to be all new. I don't know. Maybe I don't have to tune in for this one, and I'm not going to miss anything. I'm not going to not understand Filoni's movie. I'm not going to not understand. So, kind of to your point, Ted, like it's not tied to anything else. I was really excited by that. I wonder if a lot of other people maybe weren't, and that was a factor for them as well.
I think people would have been excited about that if the show dove into some of that dark side stuff more. Like the most interesting part of the show was Chimere and Manny Jacinto being on screen and everything that happened in that episode 5 and the next episode. And I think they just there was just so much time in that season spent on things that it didn't really feel like important enough to be spending time on, and took away from the most interesting parts of the show, which, like Miguel said, like the show was not like very interesting, like at times. Like it wasn't a great production by any means. It's just the world that we live in now, where and I think this speaks to a larger problem in streaming, where if you don't have that immediate like hit, it's very hard to justify like moving forward with the project. But the numbers were so low, like I don't know if that was ever going to happen. But I just wonder, what does this mean for the future of Star Wars storytelling in general? Because they tried this, and to cancel, to say I even hate the word cancel, because they never actually came out and said like, this is a multi-season show. They said like, this is the Acolyte, and there were, hopes, like that Leslie had said, like we have hopes for a future season, like we want to tell more. And then the way the show ends is like there's a lot of story left to be told. But I just wonder what this means for the future of Star Wars, because ever since Mandalorian season 2, in terms of streaming numbers, we haven't seen great ones, and this was their first swing at something outside the saga, something brand new that would hopefully feel fresh for fans. And I mean, you could argue this was about as big of a swing and a miss as they could have had. Like just like there was just an exhausting conversation online about this show. It is their least watched show by far. There's a ton of negativity that is out there, and now there's fans feeling left out because their show they did like got canceled, and it just feels weird moving forward. And I want to know from you guys, like, will Lucasfilm even be prone to take another swing like this outside of the saga anytime soon in the streaming world? Because we know we have the movies that they are supposedly going to happen.
What do we think this does to like the Dawn of the Jedi movie? I bet to a lot of people this would have felt like the same exact feeling of like, well, this takes place however many years before the Phantom Menace, so I wonder if this spells trouble for that movie. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, if that does affect anything for that. Do we even think that was even off the ground or going to be made in the first place?
So I don't think this affects Dawn of the Jedi movie, mostly because I think that movie was born out of a relationship between Kathy Kennedy and James Mangold. Like that was like the two of them having coffee and saying, what can we do? And this came up. So this is because of a pre-existing relationship, and it doesn't matter that. Like I think it goes beyond the Dawn of the Jedi will get made because Kathy Kennedy wants to make it. Like that's like the basic of it. Like in my opinion, at this moment, like of course many things have changed since this conversation happened, but I think that Mangold will be done with a complete unknown in the first in the next few months, and he will move on to Star Wars top of the year. So if he hasn't already, because they have Bo Willimon working on the script as well, so maybe there's already some writing going on. So I don't think this affects that movie at all. I don't think this is going to affect movies at all. In fact, I could actually argue for the opposite, that this could fast track movies because they are clearly TV is clearly not working at the moment. Like they
That's
have
right. I think I might have been connecting.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. I mean, the Acolyte didn't perform. I don't think they have very high expectations for a Skeleton Crew. They have high expectations for Andor, but mostly because of the awards that could come later, not necessarily because of exactly. This is like the prestige title. And Ahsoka is like years down the line. Like they have stuff. They're working on stuff that they haven't announced, but I don't think that's getting fast tracked anytime soon, other than possibly the movies, because they need to get up to get those up to get those in place again.
That makes catching up. I think I had.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Luke.
I had like falsely maybe correlated the two. Like, well, the Acolyte and Dawn of the Jedi both take place before Phantom Menace, so I understand. I think it's probably a better takeaway that the messaging they'd receive is like, oh, well, TV is just not cutting it for us. Let's get these movies like going. So I hope that's the case, that they do get those movies going, because if we can use this for anything, if we can use it for anything at all, like let's get the movies going.
I just hope it doesn't mean that we're going to. I really hope we don't see a Star Wars. Like it's one of those things where we got to pump out a Star Wars movie every 15 months, or every 16 months. Like that.
Don't want that.
That to me is that would be bad as well. Catching up on a couple comments here that I think are pretty interesting. So Travis said like the Acolyte should have been more dark side focused, not a further breaking down the hubris of the Jedi. I do just. Watching the show and hearing reactions to it, I think if they had done something more and maybe introduced Chimera and done less of the history, part of it, and focus more on the present storyline, I think that would have been, drawn a lot more people in, showing Plagueis maybe a little bit earlier, something along those lines. I just want to.
Yeah, they probably could have condensed whatever plans they had for season 2 into a season 1. Get rid of the murder mystery plot, which was ridiculous from the beginning, because who is committing the murders. Getting rid of the whole space
Red Dot
witches,
stuff. Yeah.
and and just doing 10 episodes with season 1 plus season 2, and the whole dark side thing of the training of Osha. Like,
Well, I was saying, like, just start off the show with the 16 years ago or whatever on
That's
Brindok,
fair.
or 8 years ago
yeah,
on Brindok, and just that's the first episode, and then episode 1 ends with you see May kill Master Andara. Boom. Like, okay, you got the backstory of what happened. Now we're in the present, and this is the aftermath of what happened
yeah.
16 years ago.
And that actually
Yeah.
that could actually work, because after that you actually get the impression that May is actually the bad guy. If you start off like, yes, you get the impression that May is the bad guy, the way they did it, because the marketing was surrounding that, but it just felt very fake from the get-go. Like, just something felt wrong, and not for the right reasons.
So, real quick on this, Travis. So, you said that having read the canon novels, do you think the Nile should have been given the chance to be the on-screen big bads? I'm gonna say no, not because I wouldn't love to see the Nile in some sort of TV setting. It's mostly just because I want to see what Charles Soule does in Trials of the Jedi, just when as the final novel for the High Republic publishing initiative they have. I just kind of want to see how that all ends up, and give the writers the space to do whatever story that they had come up with. And then, if that leads to possibilities that we see them show up in TV or like film even in the future, that would be awesome. But I really want, as big book fans, like, sometimes the book fans, we never win. And so I'm like, I want the books to be able to have their own thing. And I felt like we already lost a little bit with what happened with Vernestra. So I am really curious, Miguel. We talk about like the future of Disney Plus on Star Wars. What does this mean for the future? Because it's very clear we're taking a break from streaming for a while, because everything is pretty much done filming that's coming out soon, and Ahsoka's going to start, shooting soon, and that's the last, live action project that's been announced. Other than that, we just have these films, and I think Lucasfilm wants a breath of fresh air, and I think fans could use a breath, to take a break for a little bit. And we know that Bob Iger's wanting to move away from some streaming scale back. What does this mean for eventually down the line? It may be 3 or 4 years, but there will be a main, flagship Star Wars show that gets a season 1, gets a shot on Disney Plus. What does the Acolyte's failure, I guess, in this regard, I guess we could look at it as that, mean for that show? Like, what lessons do you expect Lucasfilm to take away from this to apply 5 years from now? And are they going to take away the right, like, do you anticipate them taking the right lessons away from this?
I am always rooting for Lucasfilm, and for them, and trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. But there is a lot of doubt here, because there is precedent for this in the movies with Solo in 2018, and they took the wrong lessons from that one. Like, they figured out, like, yeah, maybe people don't want spin-offs, and maybe we should just finish our movie run and whatever. And that was not the lesson to be learned. There were other lessons from that, and we can talk about them on another day, but those were the wrong lessons, and those were seemingly what they learned, because they had an Obi-Wan movie ready to be announced the month after, and it wasn't. So, like, what was going on there? So there's the wrong precedent for Lucasfilm to answer that question. At the same time, the company has changed a lot since then. Like, there have been like many promotions, many people who are no longer there, like, and all this. So I am optimistic that maybe they are actually listening now, and they can read through the bullshit and see that, okay, maybe we should take actually a closer look at what we're making, instead of just putting stuff into production, which is also interesting because the Acolyte was in pre-production for so long. Like they announced this show in 2020. They've been working on it for like months, and they didn't start shooting until 2 years later. So what was going on there? Like they actually had a lot of time. So maybe the like to answer this question, we would have to know exactly what the initial pitch from Leslie Headland was, and what
I think it was even 2019 when they announced the Acolyte. I think was that
it
2019?
was
I think
December 2020. It was
2019.
like the big presentation with the investors.
Oh, okay. I thought that was 19 for some
I
reason.
mean, there were reports from earlier that year. Like, I think it was February or so, but the official announcement was December 2020. So they've been working on it for like months, if not over a year. So it's been like what in the works for like 40 years at the very minimum. So so you would have to actually take a look at the basically perform an autopsy on this thing and see what didn't work, and go back and figure out when those things were actually implemented. Like, were those things there from the very beginning, or were those things inserted halfway through, maybe by Lucasfilm notes, maybe by some reshuffling that was done. Like maybe they fired a bunch of writers and they got worse writers. I don't know.
Well, and we'll probably have a new person in charge of Lucasfilm. Would it be my prediction by the time the next flagship show of Disney Plus Star Wars is announced? Because I feel like Kennedy will step down once there's a Star Wars film that comes out that is a real banger. I think that's when she's gonna step aside. Like, I think she's waiting for one last big win, and then we'll start riding off into the sunset. Maybe we'll see. Luke, what's the lesson that you want Lucasfilm to learn the most from all of this moving forward?
I think something I've seen a lot that I do resonate with is also, thank you, Travis Marshall. Lost Stars might be my favorite just book that's ever been written. So I agree with you there. The lesson to be learned here, I've seen some people say like it's a little dated, but a lot of shows don't have the strongest season one. There's a lot of popular shows that don't have a strong season one. It gets better as they go on. And so it makes me wonder, like, if we could have given that treatment and just been like, okay, season one wasn't a hit, but if we've got a good setup and we're going to propel ourselves into hopefully a better season two, maybe we can take another swing. And if season two is not good, we know we cannot renew it there. We know we've wrapped the story up completely. Even if it wasn't a good one, even if it was bad, we wrapped it up. That project is done. Money down the drain. Sorry. But like, that's kind of maybe where I'm sitting with this, is like, kind of sucks that we have episode 8 of the show where it's like, oh, we've got all this stuff set up for season 2. And now we get the like, well, it's not renewed. You're not going to see that anymore. So as someone who spends a lot of time in universe, and I love reading and watching Star Wars, I'm hurt the most by the fact that I have this unfinished story that really just is never going to get finished. And I wonder how loud of a crowd I'm a part of that's like, that's what hurts the most, is like, you started something, maybe it wasn't the greatest story you've ever told, but I would rather have a finished story that's bad than an unfinished one. Even if that's the case, and you have the chance to make season 2 good, like, it's not doomed. So I guess I would just like them to learn the lesson that finishing a story is better than not.
But it's also possible to, there's plenty of like shows that have great first seasons. Like House of the Dragon was a prequel show based hundreds of years before Game of Thrones, and was a absolute like banger. Like, go watch like The Boys or The Last of Us season 1. Like, there's plenty of, it's just weird. Last of Us was good. I like The Last of Us. I told you, I liked it. It gives me, I watched the last of it. It gives me trauma, but I enjoyed it. Like it just makes me terrified and hopeless for everything that happens in the world. But yes, but sometimes there's room for that. I just watch like Modern Family or Seinfeld afterwards to laugh a little bit before I go to sleep. But like no, I just think that for whatever reason, it's just baffling that with the amount of resources that Lucasfilm pours in to just baffling the amount of resource Lucasfilm has poured into Disney Plus and Star Wars TV that so many of their shows feel stale or don't look just really even close to the same level as some of the other streaming shows out there that probably don't have the budgets that are being poured like into these. And I honestly I think the biggest crime in streaming is the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi looks, and like that should have been the easiest visual win ever, and that one, it looks like it it's very clear that it has the smallest budget of any of these shows. And so I just think that scaling back's a great idea, but whatever we pour our resources into, like they need to take a look at a real, like I think Miguel said it, but like a real self audit of what they have done, what has worked, what hasn't worked, because visually there's something missing. Clearly there's a disconnect between most of the fans and Star Wars. And if they don't rectify that soon, I just wonder, if you would ask me 10 years ago, in 2014, leading into the first Star Wars movie, or even after The Force Awakens, if you would ask me like what I thought the future of Star Wars would be in 10 years, I'd be like, oh, it's going up. It's skyrocketing. Like this is going to open up a new generation of fans to new levels. If you asked me the same thing in 2019, after The Mandalorian finished season 1, I would have been a little less optimistic given everything going on with The Last Jedi. But given how big Mando and Grogu was, I would have told you pretty similarly. Like, I still think Star Wars is in a really good place. I think that we're going to be just fine. 2024, like 5 years later, like this is probably the lowest Star Wars has been in a long time, just in terms of where it sits with the fans, the brand, like how saying Star Wars to someone makes them react or feel, and like the emotions you get out of them. And so there's just a lot of damage control that needs to be done. And I don't think Skeleton Crew is going to do it. I think Andor is going to cure some of this from just the prestige aspect of it all. But it might take a banger film for this to die down a little bit. Miguel, we're getting over an hour here, but do you have any words of wisdom to close this out here with, perhaps?
I mean, I don't want to go for another 30 minutes, but I think Luke basically hit at the points that have made me really angry this week. And this is the whole notion that we should give this show another chance just to see the story. But like, this isn't how this business works. Like, this is a business at the end of the day. And by the way, like, this is like the biggest example that has hit Star Wars, Marvel, like whatever, of the peak TV era, like that bubble that came into being for the past few years, that it burst last year. That there are fewer shows being made this year than, or even also released this year than there were last year, and also last year before the next, than the previous one. This is basically because there's been a lot of spending and there hasn't been a lot of return on investment. So why would you spend another $100+ million onto a show that no one is watching? Like, that is literally fiscally irresponsible. Like, that is, you could actually get fired for that. And not even like joking, like they could actually fire an entire division because of that. Like, there's simply no way for them to renew the show. And to say that I wanted to see, like, I think the story wrapped up quite well, to be honest. Like, I think it wrapped up the story that it had attempted to tell in the previous 8 episodes, and it also set up possible future seasons. But I don't think that the season is worse because the story wasn't finished. I think the story was finished, and it was also like the door was left a bit open for there to be more stories to come. Maybe those stories will be told in another medium. Maybe they will be told somewhere else in another show a few years from now. Like, we don't know. We just know that the numbers for the show weren't good enough, and that and this toxic positivity has been driving me nuts all week, because it's just people that are making like very naive arguments, I would say. Like, this isn't just how this works, and like,
well, it's just like the negativity. It's like attention grabbing. Like, it's, it's almost like you're trying to grab
Yeah,
attention or
I
grasp at
guess.
straws, and there is a level of toxic positivity that can go viral as well, and in the world, because you have the two sides pitted against one another. But yeah, you're totally right, and it's just, I think it's just sad that the discourse now, because they announced this, like, or it was brought out by Deadline, that we're gonna have to. It seems like we're rehashing a lot of the same stuff that we have been. It seemed like we had calmed down on with the Acolyte, and now here we go again, like the hashtags, like save, renew the Acolyte, all of these things. Well, if we want to do that, we should have watched the show. Like the people that said, well, I didn't watch this from the beginning because I knew it might get canceled after one season. And it's like, well, that's part of the problem. If you're not going to invest in something from the beginning, in the age of streaming, there's zero chance that you're going to ever see multiple seasons of shows that you might like. Star Wars is an interesting place, gentlemen. It's an interesting place, to say the least. We have Skeleton Crew coming up. Andor Season 2 is going to be a lot of fun to watch, but, it's not going to necessarily move the needle. Who knows what Ahsoka Season 2 will bring. One thing is for certain, though. We will be here through all of it. That is for certain. Thank you, Miguel, Luke, for coming on, airing some grievances, trying to bring some positivity. Luke always tries to bring some positivity. Miguel brought his anger tonight. So I appreciate all of that. It's just, I think the words that I was looking for is just, it's all just really sad, because like Miguel's, one of his big predictions for the Star Wars year was that the Acolyte would be like the surprise big hit of the year and propel Star Wars forward. And then you have, I've been on here champion, not so good in hindsight, but I've been on here as well, championing the High Republic and championing like this new show that took us outside the saga. And then, Luke, I know, like, hopped on the, mid, Acolyte here. So, and I know Luke really wanted this show to do well. And I think
I think all of us did.
Yeah, like we all really wanted it to do
well.
Yeah.
Like we all, like, not well, but like we all really wanted, like, more so than like we wanted Ahsoka to do well, or we want this to do well. I think this was one we really were really cheering for, and we're really in
ever since that investor call in 2020. I was like, oh, the Acolyte taking place in the High Republic. Like this was the one that I was like, I want all my chips there if I had to put them all somewhere. So
I felt like if this show hit, this would have been something that held Star Wars forward in ways that we might not even realize.
Yeah, and I mean, a little peek behind the curtain, but on Star Wars Newsnet, whenever we are discussing what stories we want to cover and which ones we don't, like up until like now, everything that came up related to the Acolyte, however minimal, was going on, because that was like the show that people were most excited about, and it was like the most interesting to us and also to our readers for years. So that was, we weren't alone in that. Like those stories were working, and whatever crossed our eyes related to the Acolyte, however minimal, was going on the site. So there's just been like something happened in the last few months that just burst that bubble.
It's just really disappointing just to not see this fulfilled, not see it meet the expectations of, many fans, and, even to us as well. Like it was disappointed in many regards too. It has its moments. Like I will, I'm sure go back someday. I enjoy it for its moments. I think what really makes me like the most like upset is just watching. Honestly, it was like Amanda Stenberg's marketing tour that she did, whether it was playing her violin, the Force theme that John Williams wrote for the violin, or like cosplaying at celebrations, or cosplaying, for different events, and seemingly being so excited and joyful that they were in, Star Wars, and being in like a friendly, and just see how poorly that's gone for them, like throughout this. I think that's what kind of makes me the most upset, because I wonder how many of the people involved, like Daphne Keane or Lee Jong Jae, Aman Lo
Charlie
and
Barnett.
Manny will want to ever appear at like a Star Wars celebration or some of these panels like in the future, if given what's happened. Like I wonder if they're just like, I want to be done with Star. I know Manny was just at D23, but that's been planned for a long time.
He's gonna be at Celebration.
Mm-hmm.
That was said too. Yeah, he's going to be at Celebration. So
okay, I missed that.
That's still.
Yeah.
He's someone I could see doing.
Weird.
He's probably the one character that like people are like, still, and he's got
for sure.
such great charisma too. So,
Yeah.
But okay, all right. Well, thanks for hopping on tonight, guys. Every Thursday night, you can find us here, Star Wars Newsnet Live at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Go back and watch or listen to the Monday pod on Apple or Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet, or just here on YouTube. I really do think that you'll have fun with it. Miguel, you had fun with it. That was fun.
I did. Yeah, that was fun.
He texted me, Luke, about doing how much would it like take for me to do an entire show in my New Zealand accents because of my Omega like accent. I was like, we could figure out a bet at some point. But if you haven't tuned into the Monday pod, like please do. I'm a public school teacher, and so Luke decided we're celebrating the first week of school, that Luke threw just several children or people from the Star Wars galaxy that are walking into my classroom on the first week of school, and I have to be able to figure out what I'm going to do with those kids in the classroom. So that was a good time. The Timeline show comes out every Saturday morning. You could check out the Timeline show. Me and Luke are going through the entire Star Wars Newsnet timeline, Star Wars Newsnet timeline. That would be interesting. But this entire Star Wars timeline. Luke, give him a little sneak peek at this week's Timeline show.
This week we are still in Young Jedi Adventures, the animated show that takes place in the High Republic. Same era as the Acolyte. 100 years before that, though. So we've got our young Jedi going on adventures with Yoda, facing prototype droidekas. Even, there's fun adventures that they get into. So it's a fun time that Tyler and I just kind of sit around and have fun with a children's show for the time being, until we get to the next thing.
I had someone reach out to me and commented on one of the inappropriate jokes I made on last week's Timeline show, and I was like, I was hoping you wouldn't see that, as I told them, but so that was bad. But yeah, Timeline show is fun. Like I said, every Monday I bring you a Monday pod, with whoever we're bringing on that week. But this week, no Monday pod. We'll have a special Tuesday episodes. So no Monday pod on for those of you on Apple or Spotify, but we will have a Tuesday video that drops as Jay is going to review Star Wars Outlaws. Miguel, go ahead and take a moment. Tell us about your Sunday piece that comes out every week. It's my favorite read of the week because I have my Star Wars Newsnet notifications turned on. And I know that Sunday at some point, whenever I get that notification, I stop and read like right away.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I have an article that I publish every Sunday, basically recapping the news of the week for Star Wars, and I usually focus on a specific topic or sometimes topics. I want to take a victory lap here because even though my predictions for the year have been going terribly so far, and I'm probably gonna end up with 0 out of 10. I have predicted, or rather manifested a few things. I talked about the Acolyte on Sunday, the day before it like basically arguing that the viewership was like not there, and the day before news got out. I talked about Bob Iger's successor a few days before, so that was Sunday, and it was announced this week that they're assembling a special committee to choose his successor. I basically predicted that the successor would be chosen in the next few months. And I also predicted a few, or rather manifested a few weeks ago that there'll be a break in Star Wars live action TV, and it basically is looking like it's going to be. So I
we'll have a special podcast in December to go over your 10 predictions
yeah,
for Star Wars.
or maybe not as to not to humiliate myself, but yeah, no, probably, I think that would be fun. Yeah.
No, because I was all in on some of those predictions too. I was like, yes, like,
Yeah.
give it to me. Like, let's go. Thank you for tuning in tonight, everybody. Appreciate everyone hopping in. We will see you all next Thursday. Check out Star Wars Newsnet for all of your Star Wars news and needs. Of course, remember Tuesday, Jay's video. Next Thursday, we'll be back, but 2 days time, Saturday morning, you can check out the Timeline show. We had a fun time this week. For Light and Life, everyone. Until next time. Oh, and remember, we are all the Republic.